My name is Rose Stoller, and we are in beautiful Bismarck, North Dakota today, August 13th, and I am the Executive Director of the Consensus Council, which is a very small nonprofit based in Bismarck, and our mission is to bring citizens and leaders together to reach agreements on difficult issues of public policy. We are process folks here at the Consensus Council, and we bring folks together who are having conflicts or disagreements about issues and help them through the use of consensus-based decision-making to reach agreements. And we really believe that while the most common form of democracy in most people's minds is majority rules and the most votes wins, and sometimes that is useful and helpful, but there are other ways to make decisions and reach agreements where everyone can win. So we help bring diverse groups of people together, give voice to people who maybe don't always have a voice in an issue, and help them to work out their problems and find common ground. I remember a particularly tense meeting that was occurring around early childhood education issues. And the tension was related to what some of the family advocates thought the state and county agencies should be doing and weren't doing. And this was problematic, and people were becoming very defensive. And in fact, one of the government workers, to make sort of a point, came in pulling a sort of a carrier with about 20 binders, 3-ring binders of rules and regulations that he was required to follow. And I think his point was that he was feeling so overburdened with the requirements of his job. How could he possibly listen to what families were wanting and needing when they needed help for their children? And so everybody got a little sweaty in the room, and as the process went on, what we agreed to do is to create a smaller subgroup. This happened to be a large group, probably about 50 folks, and so we created a smaller subgroup of about 10 of those key players, the advocates and the government folks, and we brought them in a smaller room. We ordered a pizza. We sat and talked about these issues, and I facilitated that discussion, so we were careful that everybody had a chance to talk and share their feelings, and others were really listening, sincerely listening. And by the end of that meeting, they had formed this really wonderful partnership and had decided that they wanted to do a pilot project where families would call the government agencies seeking information to see what kinds of disparate messages they were getting from different agencies, so that the agencies could correct that and be able to give the common and right information. No one was accusing anyone of trying to give wrong information, but it was happening that way, or incomplete information was being given. And so just by listening to what the families were needing and getting and not becoming defensive about it, they formed this really neat alliance. And I think it turned out that as people, they had so much in common. Unserved or underserved populations of folks, we work really hard to get those folks involved, whether it's minority populations, and in North Dakota, that's particularly Native American populations, although in the eastern part of the state there is a large pockets of new Americans that typically are underserved in some areas. Also, people with disabilities are oftentimes their voices aren't heard. So if the issue involves them or will ultimately impact them, it's important to us that they're included. We formed what is now called the North Dakota Economic Security Alliance, which is a really strength-based, positive way to look at eliminating poverty in North Dakota. And the coalition has really grown. We started late last fall of 2008, and the coalition has really grown. We're now sort of on the edge of getting some major grant funding to hold a fall summit to begin even further building this coalition. And ultimately, what the group is going to work on are public policy changes in North Dakota that will help those who are low income or living in poverty. So it is a very policy-driven goal, and the coalition is broad, and it includes advocacy organizations and family organizations. We have technical assistance from national organizations who know about these things, and from other states who have started similar projects. So it really just sort of grew out of that one public meeting, I guess, and our willingness to step forward and say, you know, for some small money, we'd be willing at least to get the ball rolling to see if it has any traction. And it does, and it will in the future. In my early years as a social worker, a young social worker, one of my first jobs was to help depopulate a state institution of people with developmental disabilities and move them into community-based services. And that was the result of a lawsuit against the state of North Dakota by the ARC, which was formerly called the Associated for Retarded Citizens. They sued the state over the care of people in the institutions and won, as they should have. And so my first job was to help get people back into their home communities. And as a young social worker, that was really formative in how I thought about what a community means and who is welcome and who isn't in a community, and how that had changed over time. When folks were put in the institution all those many years ago, parents were doing that on the best advice of doctors and pastors and priests and family members who said, you know, just put them in an institution and really kind of forget about them, because that's the best place for them. And that was the thinking at the time. I cut my teeth on some pretty difficult conversations with parents who never imagined something like that would happen. And some were wonderfully welcoming and were very excited and became re-involved in their child's lives. And some had always been involved, even though the child had been in an institution. Others were not so willing to go there, and some, in fact, hadn't even told their families that they had had this child. So that really gave me pause about who deserves what in this world and in the community. I hope that communities will be stronger because of the work of the Consensus Council. I hope that there will be lots of dialogue everywhere throughout North Dakota, facing the issues that are problematic for us, big and small. I just hope that people will continue to sit and talk and solve problems that way because of what they've learned from the Consensus Council. They're very simple lessons, and they can be applied just about anywhere. And so that's my hope, that after I'm gone, people are still talking. Don't ever be afraid to speak and say what's on your mind. Others may be thinking it, or no one may be thinking it. And it may be just the kind of idea or phrase that we've been waiting for to be able to move something forward. So talk to people, continue talking. I know people are texting and calling and video streaming, and we can do all of that, but put it all away sometimes and just sit down and be with other people. It's very calming, and it's very good for our souls, and there's no other way to recreate that. I really believed that there has to be a better place for all people in communities, and we have to not be exclusionary, and we have to find ways to live together and work together and help each other. I believe that it's our job to help our neighbors.